Roots and wings. Roots and wings is what we say that we give our children. You're the roots. You're the soil from which children will grow. The future will grow. You're the pine trees on the mountainside standing strong for kids to play among and sing the songs. We need volunteers for religious education next year. It's only once a month. It's wonderful. Already for our sex education program, Our Whole Lives, we have had 2 people come up and say, I want to do this. Probably in part because of the atmosphere, the environment in which kids are growing up these days. Real science, real human nature needs to be taught from our religious point of view. Because this is a difficult time. We're in a difficult environment. We're called to rise to the occasion. I look at the fellowship's 70-year history and I think, well, the first 100 years are the hardest. By then, all the ups and downs, at least one, and you begin to be able to enjoy the waves and keep that flame bright on your boat, no matter what the storm. We do this by knowing who we are through the first 100 years and the next 100 years. So I'm going to talk about our roots in Ralph Waldo Emerson and about our lives together today in 3 poems. Well, it was July 15th, 1838, that Ralph Waldo Emerson gave his Divinity School address, which challenged, right before all of the great Harvard divines and the new crop of ministerial students, all the revealed wisdoms that had accumulated in Unitarianism. He said this, in this refulgent summer, it's been a luxury to draw the breath of life. The grass grows, the buds burst. The meadow is spotted with fire and gold in the tint of flowers. The air is full of birds and sweet with the breath of pine and fresh mown hay. Night brings no gloom with its welcome shade. Through the transparent darkness, the stars pour their almost spiritual rays. And then he says, the mind opens and asks, what am I? What is, asks the human spirit, with a curiosity new kindled but never quenched. Behold these infinite relations, so like, so unlike, so many, yet one. I would study, I would know, I would admire forever. These works have been the entertainments of the human spirit of all ages. And yet, he says, beyond nature, there's an even more secret, sweet, and overpowering beauty that appears to us when our hearts and minds open up to the sentiment of virtue. We learn that our being is without bound, that to the good and to the perfect, we are born, even though we lie in evil and weakness. He's talking about holding on to something he calls the intuition of moral sentiment, the intuition of what is right and what is good, what is inclusive and whole. I remember going to Transylvania with the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames, where I had the privilege to serve. And we were allowed into a memorial service there. And one woman was designated to sit with us way in the back and translate as the preacher was speaking. And he said, what does that mean in the Bible? Because we are Bible-based. Be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Jesus said this. And he said, we're here to memorialize a good woman who led a good life, who did the best she could under all the circumstances of our lives here in this town, in this region. And that's what Jesus was asking us to do, not to have to be it, but to yearn for it, to want to know what is good, how we can perfect our moral sentiment, how we can live a new world right here, as our dear friend who has passed on did. She inspires us with her life to continue to grow our own moral sentiment. Ralph Waldo Emerson said this is an insight into the perfection of the laws of the soul, and he even went so far as to say that there is an identity of the law of gravity with the purity of the heart, that the urge to lead an ethical moral life has a source of gravity and is one with the laws of nature. Certainly that's who we are, pulled together by our moral sentiments, by our principles, not by creed, but by a dedication, a commitment to carry the flame of ethical life. How shall we be together? That's our question. Rachel Carson reminds us that the more clearly we can focus our attention on the wonders and realities of the universe, the less taste we shall have for destruction. For that's a flame we carry, of lessening the urge to revenge, the taste for destruction, because that's who we are, the flame we carry amidst all the storms of changing times. I love something that Arthur C. Clarke wrote, possibly somewhat poetically, as a way of remembering the wonders and realities of the universe around us and lessening our more destructive tendencies. He says this: a star forms by gravitational contraction of dust and gas and begins to glow when temperature and density of the core rise sufficiently for fusion. This depletes hydrogen fuel eventually, and a fusion of helium becomes a red giant, and then stars burn out their nuclear fuel and collapse to become white dwarfs. In a white dwarf, a cubic inch weighs several tons. 10,000 times denser is a neutron star, a giant atomic nuclei. This finally collapses upon itself, sending shock waves throughout the universe. A great big sound, an enormous clang. The impact of this great gong on interstellar space is to change on an atomic level the entire area in great concentric circles for light years around. At the point of immediate impact is the location of the formation of all the heavy elements. That is, all the gold and silver you wear, all the trace minerals in your body come from the great cosmic gong of a star in the vast reaches of the universe. How can we live carrying the flame of our tradition of continual learning and love for the moral life with one another? Emerson adjures us to consider the universe and our internal moral sentiments along one continuum. So a poem by Rosemary Watola Trummer. It's called Watching My Friend Pretend Her Heart Isn't Breaking. On Earth, just a teaspoon of neutron star would weigh 6 billion tons. 6 billion tons equals the collective weight of every animal on Earth, including the insects, times 3. 6 billion tons sounds impossible until I consider how it is to swallow grief. Just a teaspoon. And one might as well have consumed a neutron star. How dense it is, how it carries inside it the memory of collapse, how difficult it is to move, then how impossible to believe that anything could lift that weight. There are many reasons to treat each other with great tenderness. One is the sheer miracle that we are here together on a planet surrounded by stars. One is that we cannot see what anyone else has swallowed. How shall we live together with the moral sentiment connected to an entire universe? If I were doing that little box that Reverend Christina does for the kids, you could open up a box and find in it nothing or emptiness but it's actually 30,000 neutrinos freshly produced and 4 zeptagrams of dark matter. Cosmetologists are easy to shop for because you just get them a box for a present for their birthday. Well, it's those moments, the teachings, the glances, the handshake, the moments when we bring our moral sentiment into the world and connect ourselves and our children to all of nature. James Cruz has a poem, Small Moments. The world is not made only of sorrow and heartbreak. Something always slips through the gaps of a given day. Dew, for instance, clinging to blades of grass, newly risen from the lingering sleep of winter, those droplets soaking your boots and the legs of your jeans as you pass through, as proof that you are here and belong to this planet. That's not enough. Then I give you buttered sourdough toast, smeared with as much strawberry jam as that bread can hold, and the first bite whose burst of summer returns you to the body, where small moments like these are stored, like the nutrients leaves pull from the sun as soon as it breaks through storm clouds, filling the cracks with gold. And I'll end with a poem by David White, The House of Belonging, and I'll change the very last verse a little bit and repeat it for us. I awoke this morning to the gold light, turning this way and that, thinking for a moment it was one day just like any other, but the veil had gone from my darkened heart, and I thought it must have been the quiet candlelight that filled my room. It must have been the first easy rhythm with which I breathed myself to sleep. It must have been the prayer I said, speaking to the otherness of the night, and I thought, this is the good day you could meet your love. This is the gray day someone close to you could die. This is the day you realize how easily the thread is broken between this world and the next. And I found myself sitting up in the quiet pathway of light, the tawny, close-grained cedar burning around me like fire, and all the ascending angels of this house, heaven ascending through the first roof of light the sun has made. This is the bright home in which I live. This is where I ask my friends to come. This is where I want to love all the things it's taken me so long to learn to love. This is the temple of my adult aloneness, and I belong to that aloneness as I belong to my life. This is the bright home in which we live. This is where we ask our friends to come. This is where we want to love all the things it has taken us so long to learn to love. There is no house like the house of belonging. There is no house like the house of belonging. Thank you, gentle people. Let us carry the flame together.